peoples? What's up? Welcome to Shelf Stories, the channel that tells tales from games, books, and life, and welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop podcast. I am your host, Jason. Thank you so much for stopping by for this latest chat with friends. And this friend, we have been talking for a little while, trying to figure out the right time to get together and, share our love of games and everything. And then just a lot of different events have come together, both in the world and in gaming and all sorts of places. And it's like, you know what? Enough dilly-dallying. I need to have this person on the show. So she is the person who runs the Board Games in a Minute channel on YouTube and other platforms. You probably heard her appearances on the Dice Tower and Find Games for Doomsday and other podcasts, but she has shared her story, very unique in this space. So I'm all about unique voices here in Shelf Stories. She is Sarah Shah. Welcome to the show. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh, walaikum assalam. Thank you for having me on.
So that was intentional. We are going to, you know how I roll here on Self Stories. You can get the different origin stories from different places, and that's all good. And I especially recommend the 5 Games to Doomsday. So I can't do what he does, get you to talk about all these different personal things, and you're just like, okay, I guess I'm talking about this now.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love his podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you know what? Before we even get there, and I know, let me kiss Ben's butt for a second. I have no shame in that. What was that like to be in the chair and have someone like Ben Maddox of 5 Games for Doomsday kind of take you in different directions? How did that feel?
It was so great because honestly, I don't want to put down any of the other podcasts or channels I've been on, but I tend to get asked the same questions over and over and over again. But when I was being interviewed by Ben to be asked questions that I'd never been asked before, I really appreciated that. And he is such a good listener and can really draw details from you and just make you open up and make you feel at ease. He is wonderful at what he does. I watch almost everything he puts out. I've become a super huge fan. Recently bought a shirt, which I'm not wearing right now, but I'm wearing my own Board Games in a Minute shirt today. But I recently bought a 5 Games for Doomsday shirt just to show support. Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I learned a lot. You had gone to London and you went to school and you had a previous relationship and different things. And it's like, wow, I'm learning this in a board game podcast. And I try to, on my show, I try to do it different, but a different. So, so my show is about culture, and my show and this show is going to be about religion, because if you are Muslim, which Sarah is Muslim, and we'll talk all about that, religion and culture kind of can't be separated as cleanly as it is in the West. Is that fair?
I would say that's fair. It's difficult to separate the culture from religion if you're Muslim. And, different Muslims have different cultures, and cultures are very integrated with the religion. Yeah.
Right. So we're going to talk about that. We this is what we do. We share voices, we share stories, and, the more we know about the world and the more we know about people, the more I think our personal experiences, and we'll get into this, the more prepared we are to talk about difficult things that come up. So I will be completely transparent with people. This episode will be in 2 parts. One, we will focus more on gaming and more on kind of getting to know Sarah as a person. That will be on the podcast. The second part will only be on Shelf Stories, and we will get into some of the current stuff, right? And in terms of Muslim and what's happening in the world, in Israel, and different places. So you guys know I don't shy away from that, but I try to do it in a spirit of education, compassion. So, and Sarah's a good sport, and Sarah is knowledgeable, and she cares. So we're going to do the best that we can to educate. So, but this is for gaming. This is for gaming. So like I say in every episode of Voices, please share your gamer origin story, but with a cultural perspective. How did your culture, family of origin, play into how you got into gaming?
Wow. So growing up, I didn't have the family game nights that, you would see people in the West have. And
Where did you grow up?
Well, I actually grew up in America. I grew up in New York. I've born and raised in New York, but I grew up with Muslim parents who are from South Asia. So
where in South Asia?
Pakistan. So
okay. Would you identify as Pakistani?
I guess, yeah. So the thing is, I'm what you call Syed. I'm a descendant of Muhammad on both sides of my family, so I can trace my ancestry back to Muhammad and see where my ancestors lived during what time period. So how they migrated from the Arabian Peninsula through present day, Iran. They were settled in Iran for a while, and then to Pakistan. So the reason I do identify a lot with Iran is also because I'm Shia Muslim, and where
Mhm.
you'll find Shia Muslims mostly in Iran, Lebanon, Iraq, and then a smaller amount in Pakistan. So yeah.
And we'll go over those distinctions later after we get
Yeah.
into the gaming content.
So growing up, I didn't have the family game nights that like Americans would have, or I would assume most Americans would have, but I so badly wanted them. So, we bought the typical, family board games like Candyland and Monopoly. Actually, I don't even think I played Monopoly when I was little, like maybe like once or twice, but Candyland, Life, and things like that. But we did play some Pakistani games, which are like carom board, and it's like this thing where you flick around discs and stuff.
Oh,
But
that's so
yeah,
funny. I had Benita Kaur on another show, and she's from Punjab, and same game.
yeah,
Same
yeah.
game. I know South Asia, India, Pakistan, they're going like, the governments are at war, but it's the culture is so
Oh, the
interwoven.
culture is basically the
Hmm.
same. Yeah. So yeah, we, play carom board, and then, I have vivid memories of playing Chinese checkers with my family, or like regular checkers. Unfortunately, they really didn't get into chess, and I love chess and I really, really suck at it. But yeah, so, those are the kinds of games we played, and like Trouble and stuff like that. But my
Right.
mom is very competitive. So my dad wouldn't really play unless it was like carom board or something like that. But like when we would play games with my mom, she's super competitive, and she would not like let us win or go easy on us just because we're kids. So I think I'm very competitive by nature too. Like I'm not a sore
Hmm.
loser, and I don't gloat when I win, but yeah, I am
That
very
comes up
competitive.
every once in a while. So speaking of like diversions, like so totally off script, but you triggered something in me. Every once in a while, there'll be like a post from a parent that says, in terms of like teaching games to their kids, should I let my kid win? And there's a lot of difference. And there's people that just swear by let them win every once in a while and go ahead and do that. And then there's the other side, and it sounds like you're solidly on that other side, aren't you?
Oh my God. And now, like, I play board games. Like, I've tried to get my mom into more modern board games, and I've introduced her to games like Azul and Porto. And she is so competitive, and she kicks my butt in Azul. Like, she is so good at Azul. And
Uh-huh.
she, like, is so happy when she wins. Like, she'll, do a little dance, and she'll, like, really take pride in winning. Yeah.
And so if you were to have a little one, if you were blessed by Allah to have a little one, would you do the same? Would you like
Yeah.
crush your kid and have them reconstruct their ego from the shattered remains? Or would you be like a little bit American where it's like, okay, you can have a little bit of things?
That's a good question. Firstly, I don't think I want children. I mean, that's
Mm,
something I had decided quite a while ago, that I don't think children are for me for many reasons. But if for some reason life did give me a little one, or I changed my mind for some reason,
mhm.
um, I would, maybe not be as competitive. I wouldn't necessarily let the child win.
Hi, Sarah's mom.
But yeah, but maybe like, I don't know, like just being um um maybe go a little bit easier on them, but still try, but maybe not try too hard. Does
Mhm.
that count as letting them win? I don't know.
You wouldn't be you wouldn't quite replicate what you were handed down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Does your
yeah.
mom watch your content?
No, only if I show her. Like sometimes I'll go home and be like, "Oh, look at this new video I made," and I'll just like show her. She can't understand a word I'm saying. It's too fast for her. And she's like,
Mm,
"Oh, wow, okay." And then
mhm.
that's it. So,
And so you grew up here in New York, and then with the cultural games and like mass market games and all that kind of stuff. You've told the story many times, but like the entry into hobby board games, like tell us about that branching into and reaching that leveling up, as we like to say in the gaming verse.
yeah, I leveled up when I was in law school. My friends introduced me to Catan, and I fell in love, and I wanted to play it all the time. Like I wanted to, like I had a core group of friends, and we would meet every like Thursday night or Friday night and get together for dinner or something, like some activity or whatever. And I would beg and plead, like, let's play Catan again. Let's play Catan again. Like we played a total of maybe 2 or north maximum 3 times. I can vividly remember 2 times. I don't even know if there was a third time. So yeah, so I did not get to play as often as I would have liked. But then after law school, I moved to London for a couple of years, and that's when I started attending the London on Board meetup. And that's where I really discovered that there's this huge world of board games that I had no clue about. And I'm so glad I attended. Like I would not, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I never would have,
Mhm.
been in this hobby if it weren't for London on Board, I think. So
One of the things that kind of emerged in like my other channels when they talk about people growing up in other cultures, especially if it's immigrant culture. Were your family like from Pakistan, or were they grew up here?
yeah, they were from Pakistan. Both my parents were born there, and then they moved here shortly after getting married. So both me, my older sister, and then my younger sister, who came many years later, were
Mhm.
born in America.
And
Yeah.
so there's pressure sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes that like getting, the occasional game is fine. Like, just like, we're okay, but like hobby gaming is a little bit much. Like now you're wasting your time.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like,
Okay. Right.
so I don't get that from my mom. Like my mom has been really cool. Like over the years, my mom has really evolved as a person, and her mentality, like shifting from like this typical, like, South Asian mentality about things to becoming more and more educated. And
Yeah. Why
so
no doctor?
yeah, well, that for the longest time, that was an issue. Like I, didn't matter at all. I'm not saying I didn't matter to my parents, but like, not being a doctor is something that is, kind of like you're seen as a lesser person sometimes. Like
Yeah.
I would go to family parties, like dinner parties, and everyone would want to know what my older sister, who's in med school, what she's doing, or when she became a doctor. No one cared about what I was doing. I wouldn't get asked how I am or anything like that. Like I was basically invisible. But once I became a lawyer, and my mom needed legal advice here and there, and I was able to give it to her, and she found lawyers to be very useful, and she suddenly learned, like, yeah, being a lawyer is a good thing. Like, and then she decided that every family needs a doctor and a lawyer. So I was like, okay, good, I changed her mind about something. So
Mhm.
yeah, but yes, the board game thing, like I have extended family who I know think it's really weird and have made comments about it.
Like
And
what kind of, I'm curious. Everybody, people like, I know there's a lot of like modern white people who are like, they maybe they got into games from their parents and they get like little comments here and there. When it's like a cultural situation, sometimes they'll say stuff and it's like, whoa, sorry about that.
just like, oh, it's a childish hobby. It's like, no, it's not. Like, and I try explaining like all the really complex board games that they can get into, and how sometimes it takes just an hour to learn a game. Like, and I try to explain them the benefits of playing board games and how it keeps your mind like active and can stave off dementia when you get older. So, but just there's this mentality that I'm just wasting my time, that I'm just playing children's games, and she's just weird. Like, why isn't she watching cricket? Why isn't she attending dinner parties and getting dressed up in these like fancy South Asian clothes and watching Bollywood movies? Like, oh, she's, heavily involved in this board game scene. And I do get a lot of judgment about that. But not from my own immediate family. They, I've been able to show them how cool it is and they love it. But extended family and people in the community, yeah, definitely.
I point that out because we talk about making board gaming a welcoming hobby. Like we got to work extra hard to convert, or like at least appeal to some of these folks who it just they could be like your mom. Like your mom is a perfect example. Like she would probably rock the house at a lot of these different like other games like Pass
Yeah.
Azul and everything.
Yeah.
And there's probably many millions of people that are like but they look at us and they're thinking, "Ooh, this is this is whatever the words are."
Yeah.
So like not to say that there's like anything wrong there. It's just like if we are interested in broadening a hobby, I think that's something to think about.
Yeah.
And like and becoming cross-cultural. That's like, okay, it's not just a matter of opening the door. No, we have to do a little bit more appealing themes, more diverse types of games, more variants of carom. Who knows, or
yeah. No, recently I played a game that I absolutely fell in love with, Craftwagen. Like when when it got pulled out, and I was with two friends, and when I first saw it, I was like, oh God, I'm not gonna like this. It's a game about like creating cars with like the best engines and whatever, the bodies. And I played it and I absolutely fell in love with it, but it gave me like an idea for like a South Asian themed game. And I was like, ooh, like
what? What's the theme? Because I know you have percolating ideas, like different types of games.
yeah. So right now my main game that I'm working on is my elephant game, but it gave me an
Yes, the
idea.
elephant worker placement game.
Yes, but it gave me an idea about creating a game about world fashion, like creating like
Mm.
dresses from different areas of the world, including shalwar kameezes and saris and clothes from like the Middle East and Africa. So yeah, I don't want to give away too much of my idea, but it gave me an idea like that. And so I thought that would be pretty cool to make someday.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So then, and that's where we are, right? We got into Catan, and once you get, pop that top, then it's like, okay, you got to all the other stuff. And if you want to know how why she started board games in a minute, other podcast. It's all sorts of
yeah, I've gone over that story plenty of times.
Plenty of times. But at least if somebody, if nobody knows the channel, you can go ahead and introduce the channel and the concept.
Yeah, so I run board games in a minute. Basically, I give rundowns of board games, like the gist of the game in a minute. If it's a more complex game, then it's basically the gist of the game. If it's a lesser complex game, sometimes I can even give a breakdown of the rules in a minute. So it gives people an idea of whether the game is something that they would like or not in a minute. So you just spend a minute watching my video, and then you can decide whether or not it's a game for you, and then maybe go explore further content that's longer if you want more details about it. So people
Longer.
do find, so people, I've learned that people find my videos to be valuable, which I really appreciate and love. Yeah.
Cool. So that's board games in a minute, and that is Sarah's origin story. Now we're going to get into, we had a pandemic, and a lot of solo games, hitting your table, a lot of different things going on. This is the One Stop Co-op Shop podcast to be able maybe share a little bit about over the last little while what has really struck your eye in the solo space.
Yeah, I've played a number of solo games. I started playing a number of solo games when the pandemic started. It's hard for me to remember which ones I started with. I think Welcome To was the first one I started with. And I played Cartographers. I played a solo game of Chai, which has stunning components. And Chai Tea for Two is on Kickstarter right now.
You did a spot for Tea for Two, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've played a number of solo games. I find that I like solo games that don't require too much setup. I've played Tasty Humans solo. I've played, some of the other games that require a bit more setup, but I really enjoy games like Fleet the Dice game, and Railroad Inc., which I recently got in my collection because I backed it on Kickstarter. I really enjoy games where, the setup is minimal and I can, play it, without too much, going on. Oh, I recently bought Cafe, which I really love.
What is Cafe?
It's like you can play it solo, but basically you have your own little cafe and you're just trying to move along beans through the process of like, I can't remember all the 4 steps, but there's like 4 different steps and you need to transfer beans from one place to another in your little tableau. Like you're laying down cards strategically after drafting them and trying to get your beans through this process of drying and roasting and shipping them off. And it's pretty difficult. Like the solo is really hard. Like my score is really abysmal, but I love it. I love the artwork. It's a kind of like Art Deco artwork. I really love it. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
All right. And what if you had to? Okay, well, let's play the game, right? What is it? The Doomsday game. Like you have all 4. So I know you're 5. Go listen to Ben's thing for her 5. Yeah. Like, and there was some good ones on there. Like you mentioned Petrichor. That's a hidden gem. Petrichor is a hidden gem. It's a delightful game.
It's amazing, yeah.
About clouds, and Petrichor is like, what is it? The scent of like dew after a rainstorm.
Like after rain, like the scent of the earth after rain, which is amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All 4 games have fallen out. What's the solo game? It's specifically the solo game that you're keeping.
Oh my gosh, the solo game that I'm keeping. Wow, that's so hard. I think I will have to say Fleet the Dice.
Fleet the Dice game. So
that's so hard. I don't want to pick just one.
They all fall. It's not you picking. They all fall out. Which one are you grabbing first? So Fleet the Dice game. So Fleet the Dice game being awesome, right? And it is like combo-licious, right? You're rolling it out. And actually I like the original Fleet. So if
Oh,
you
I haven't played the
like
original
the original card game, I'm a
Yeah.
card game guy. I'm more of a card game guy than a dice game guy. Although dice are fine. But Fleet was a engine building kind of in a mold of like a Race for the Galaxy ish game with the
Oh,
multi-use
wow.
cards and like combos at the end. So it's like, so you have like a pile of chits, which is like fish. And you're playing your boat like you kind of like you're doing in the dice game. You're playing your boat card. You have licenses, so like you can't play a boat card without playing the license card. There's a bidding mechanism to get the licenses in the first place.
Oh.
There is combos, so it's like you want the cod with the lobster so that you get that combo going. You want the processing vessels so that you can get that combo going. And then it does that thing where it's like it just fishes the whole thing out at like end because everybody's got their engine going.
Oh, that's really cool.
So it's like you got dribble, 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 dribble,
Yeah.
and Fleet of Dice game replicates that because it's like dribble, dribble, dribble. Whoa! Look at all the combos. Look at all the stars. Is that what you enjoy about it?
I love it. Yeah, I love all the comboing, which I think is great. And yeah, I love how strategic it is for a game that just has like 2 sheets of paper, a couple of cards, and some dice. And the dice are just so gorgeous. And yeah, I love it.
I don't think we ever played through the One Stop Co-op Shop. I think you're inspiring me to get that on the table and do a playthrough.
Oh, yay.
I will do
totally
that.
Should. Yeah.
I totally should. I got to check that though. We'll see. We have a lot of videos in the One Stop Co-op Shop. Okay, so that is Sarah, the gaming verse, her gaming origin story and everything, and a little bit of the culture stuff. Again, Sarah's all over the place. Open book. Go ahead and go follow her. Boarding Games in a Minute on Twitter and all these other places.
I'm way too much of an open book. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so education time, people. And a cultural education. There are not we just don't have a lot of Muslims here in our gaming space. We have gamers. Like I've actually had I did a Twitter thread recently, and I've actually had a couple of people that like, oh, I'm Muslim, and everything, and that was really good.
Oh, wow.
Blah blah blah. Yeah, like I kind of like it's kind of like putting a fire up in the forest, and then people kind of attracted to the fire. It's like, oh, I didn't know there was a fire here. So like that was cool, but like in the content creator verse, it's a little bit barren. So I think there's a little bit of education that could happen when it comes to, and I don't want to make this like let's teach class. You're a living person, and I'd love to know how Islam kind of plays out in your everyday life.
Well, for Muslims, and again, before we even start, I want to say I don't speak for all Muslims everywhere.
Oh, sure.
This is just me, and I would say that like a lot of people in this world, I kind of have a complicated relationship with religion. Like sometimes I'm very close to it, sometimes I'm a bit more removed from it, depending on my own mental state, my emotional state, and what's happening in my own life. But yeah, for Muslims around the world, Islam is supposed to, is a big part of your life. It's like an everyday thing that how you live your life by these Islamic principles of, how you treat other people and what you believe your purpose is on this planet, and
what you eat.
Yes. And even though I'm not a very good Muslim in a lot of ways, like I don't pray 5 times a day or whatever, but yeah, I do follow like the dietary restrictions. I've never eaten pork except for accidentally a couple of times, which purely accidental.
In America, you can't avoid it. Like they'll stick bacon into anything. Like,
yeah,
I've had bacon ice cream. Like what is this doing in here?
Bacon ice cream? Oh my god! Well, no, I was such an idiot. Like I honestly didn't know what BLT stood for, and what BLT, and bit into it, and I'm like, what is this? And then I find out that the B stood for bacon, and I'm like, how did I not realize this? And this was when I was in college. So yeah, so I've accidentally eaten bacon, and then I was like running around trying to find a toothbrush on campus. I was like, oh my god, I need to brush out that flavor from my mouth. I was a bit of a wreck. And I don't drink alcohol because drinking alcohol is a huge sin in Islam as well.
Is there a rationale for that you're aware of?
Yeah, because it makes you lose your inhibitions, like
Oh no, the pork thing. I know about the alcohol.
Oh, okay. Oh, the pork thing. Yes, it's considered an unclean meat. And if you look at, I mean, people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the Old Testament, pork was also forbidden in the Old Testament. There's a reason that Jews and Muslims don't eat pork, and we still abide by that. But I do believe that at one point in history, even Christians were forbidden from eating pork and did follow that rule as well. And I even know Christians who don't eat pork because of that. It's just considered an unhealthy, unclean meat. In the way
especially like culturally, if they're kind of in the Orthodox tradition, like, you grew up a little bit closer to that land, and that Semitic influence is still present. Like if you get, the further away you get from that, the more it's like,
that's true.
they'll like if you go into Britain and France and Western Europe and then all the different places. But if you're like a Christian, there's many Christians, millions of Christians, in that area of the world. It's gonna look a lot like,
for sure. Like we'll get into that later, but like there's a lot of Christian Palestinians, there's a lot of Christians in Lebanon, there's Christians in that part of the world, and culturally they are very similar to Muslims. And but I believe that's why pork is forbidden. And also there's that whole thing about the animal and the hooves that it has, and how the animal in its day-to-day life, how clean that animal is and how it behaves. And so
and so it's not just culture. I mean, so full disclosure, before all this culture stuff, before I was a psychotherapist, I was a religion scholar. Oh, wow. I was a interreligious. That was my specialization was interreligious dialogue. My college, Brooklyn College, did not have a religion major, or I had a religion major, but didn't have any classes because all the professors were gone. So I went all over the world and I studied religion in different countries. So it's like I took religions of China in China, the religion of India in India, all these different places. And so I do have a background. I'm not just like, just letting people know. But I think it's really important to know that Christians, Jews, and Islam, that's not three different religions in the way that we understand, like they're totally sectioned off. Like we're children of Abraham. Like there's a common root here. And I think we need to know that. I think we need to cover a little bit of education about, that just the common root that, if you're a person of faith at all.
Yeah, when I was before law school, if people have listened to some of my interviews, they would know that before law school, I had started a PhD in Middle Eastern studies. It was an area that, because my roots are, going way back, go to Prophet Muhammad, and I was always very fascinated by the area. I wanted to learn more about where my ancestors were from and learn more about the politics and the culture of the region. And so I had started a PhD. I ended up not finishing it, so I just took the master's and left. But I took a couple of religious studies classes as well, including a Jewish studies class. And I just loved, I actually wrote my paper on how in Islam, we believe that it was one son that Abraham was about to sacrifice, where Jewish and Christian people believe it was the other son. And I'm just so fascinated by that.
The story being Abraham, most of us culturally know about Abraham taking Isaac up to the mount, and it's like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and that's the line.
But Muslims believe it's Ismail who was about to be sacrificed. So it's just so fascinating to me. But yes, we all are these monotheistic faiths which believe in the same God, which I think a lot of people don't realize, or some people, I think, even when you tell them that, they don't want to acknowledge that Muslims believe that they believe in the same God as Jews and Christians, of course, putting aside the Trinity. That we're
not going to get into the whole thing.
That's something so we believe in the same gods. We have a lot of the same prophets. A lot of people are so surprised when I tell them how Jesus is mentioned in the Quran and how Mary is mentioned in the Quran more times than she was mentioned in the Old Testament, even, you know what I mean? And she's mentioned in the I thought it was is it the New?
The Old Testament is a Jewish book, and then the New Testament is
the New Testament. And she's mentioned more times in the Holy Book than even Muhammad is. That's how important Mary and Jesus are to us. And a lot of people, I tell them that, Muslims believe that Jesus never died. And that's something that's mind blowing to them that they don't even realize. Can I just basically tell you how we believe Jesus didn't die?
Sure. Why not? Yeah. Why not? You seem so excited. I love this.
So Muslims believe, he was a prophet of God. So we acknowledge him as a prophet of God, but not the son of God, because we as Muslims, one of the biggest tenets of our faith is that God neither begets nor was he begotten. So it's extremely important for us to believe in the oneness of God and believe that he has no children and he was not born to
Right.
anyone or any entity either. So Jesus was a prophet of God, but we believe that when his enemies were after him, God wanted to save him. So he lifted Jesus up to heaven. And the person who was killed on the cross was actually one of Jesus's enemies, whose face was made to look like Jesus. So we do believe that Jesus will return someday with the Messiah to fight the Antichrist. So, we do have a lot of similarities as well. There are differences, but we have a lot in common, in fact. And, I wish people would focus on that and embrace the commonalities and view each other as cousins, if not brothers and sisters, at least. Like, I love meeting people who are of other faiths, and especially when I love my like Christian and Jewish cousins, and I enjoy talking to them about religion and getting to know them and appreciating the similarities that we have, and use that to build our relationships. Yeah.
And so we talk about brotherhood. I mean, we can't get along within the different faiths, right?
Even within Islam, there's a lot of
Right.
fighting. And
So you were talking before about Shias and Sunnis,
yeah.
and is that a right framing? Like it's sometimes I'll hear like that's okay framing. Sometimes I'll hear that like that's too simple, or I don't know what.
So as a Shia, I know I've studied my faith really in depth. I mean, at one point in my life, I was way more religious than I am now. And I actually wanted to go to Iran to study, to become a woman Mulana. A Mulana in Shiism is someone who basically is like, it's like the equivalent term of Imam, which is what Sunnis use. Shias don't use the term Imam to basically describe their priest or whatever, because we have 12 Imams, which is something different. There's so much, that you can study and learn that it gets a bit complicated. So a lot of people would say that the only difference between Shias and Sunnis is political. I would say that's not 100% true, but just as many non-Muslims have misconceptions about Muslims in general, a lot of Sunnis have misconceptions about Shias, in fact. And, an interesting fact that I tell people is that there is this perception that the terrorists are all out to get all the non-Muslims and kill all the non-Muslims of the world. And, we get judged based on the actions of a few extremists in the world, when the vast majority of Muslims in the world are not like that. And an interesting fact I like to tell people is that, in fact, the terrorists have killed more Shias than they have ever killed non-Muslims. We are their bigger target than non-Muslims are. We are considered, like Shias, and other Shias in this world are considered to be infidels by these terrorists. Like, they view us as a bigger threat to them than non-Muslims even. I had an uncle who was killed by the Taliban in Pakistan. So, that's something I tell people. And I, try to educate my Muslim friends who are Sunni, because that extremist ideology, there was a period of time in the US where it really did infiltrate a lot of mosques in even America. And I faced a lot of discrimination in my own hometown for being Shia. We were the only Shia family in a city filled with Sunnis, and we faced so much discrimination because of that. And it took years to undo the hatred that these people brought into the community. And so there's a lot of education to be done, even within the community itself.
And the basic difference being like lineage.
Lineage, right? Yes. So the basic difference is who was to succeed Prophet Muhammad and become the leader of the Islamic community. And Shias believe it was to be his cousin and his son-in-law. So his cousin was married to his daughter Fatima, and then they had some children. And so Shias believe that the imamate, that the caliphate should have gone to Ali. And we believe in the imamate, which is 12 imams. And so that's what we follow. Whereas Sunnis believe it was the caliphate. And for them, Ali was actually the third khalif, whereas Ali was our first imam. So we have this concept of imamate, while Sunnis have this concept of caliphate. So yeah.
And not that it's like super important for people to know, but it's like, it does come from somewhere. It's not like people made it up, and it's not like it matters, like these differences matter. They shouldn't matter that much. They shouldn't be that.
They shouldn't matter that much. And it's sad because like even recently, a bunch of Shia girls were killed on a bus in Afghanistan, and it's something that you won't even hear much about even in Muslim countries because the girls were Shia. It's like, oh, okay, Shia girls died. Like
Mm,
hatred has really seeped into the community, and it's really sad. And we're working hard. A lot of people are working hard to try to make Muslims united because we have other fish to fry. Like we are viewed, Muslims in general are viewed as terrorists by like a vast majority of the world. Like, oh,
mhm.
look at those people, look at those terrorists. Like they want to burn us all, they want to kill us all, they want to, they think that we're all infidels. Like, no, so we have so much more that we need to be doing as a community. And so infighting and all of that is not helping us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And when you really look at the stuff, and I get it, you have to you have to get into this what we know about which is like a lot of the wars and all kind of thing. But like it's over 1 billion people,
Oh yeah.
and it's and it's instantiated all over the place. Like you can have stories of the Mali Empire in North Africa was run by Muslims,
Yeah.
and that we're talking North Africa, we're talking Egypt, we're talking Iberian. There's a long tradition of Iberian Moroccan Muslims, and then you go out, you go into India, as you were mentioning, with
Yeah.
Pakistan, you go into Southeast Asia. I mean, there's all different kinds. The person that gave me the most education when I was in New Zealand, of all places, and it was a Somalian Muslim man. And yeah, at the time I was like traveling. I was really, I was like in my 20s, and I was kind of questioning, and I was really open to it. I was open to like, okay, what I really want to know, what are the paths? And I was thinking about it. It's like, oh man, this is a path for me. And so this man he's such a beautiful man. He's from Somalia, war refugee, so has that kind of like doesn't waste a minute of life type thing of
Yeah.
going on about him. And his wife was Jehovah's Witness from America. So I was like, but they made it work. And he ran his mosque, and he kind of gave me an education, and he was such a beautiful man. And it is like, it is a beautiful faith,
Yeah.
that generates a lot of good despite what the
Despite what
Western
the
media.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the media is a huge problem, and if the media just continues in the way it is, we're never, I feel like, well, we won't see any progress in this world. And it upsets me that the media still, how it portrays Muslims and incidents that happen in other parts of the world, the language that is used. Like, if you really get down to it, the way that headlines are written and articles are written, the way things are presented, it's very intentional, and it, continues this, belief that Muslims are terrorists, that we should be all, that everyone should be afraid of them, that they want to kill all Americans, that they want, all these things, which are not true. Like, there's over 1 billion Muslims in this world, and the terrorists are the extremists are a tiny, tiny,
Right.
tiny percentage of that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So okay, so this is just the beginning, just the dusting. A real person living this faith, and with just the beginning. We really want to, or I really want to, like on my channel, and then I'm sure Sarah as well, and her witness and her work and everything, just like get the word out. We're talking about human beings over here, and so much of the conflict it requires an understanding of it. So this is the start. But I will end the podcast portion of it here. If there was a aspect, or maybe multiple aspects of Islam, that would make a good board game, that would kind of that you can borrow in, and you would
Wow.
love to see, whether it's an historical, like the Muhammad, the kind of like spreading Islam in the beginning,
Yeah.
and Saudi Arabia, whether it's a cultural piece, whether it's some kind of diasporic
Hmm.
piece. Like, what do you think would be what would make a good scintillating, like, let's get Ian O'Toole over here and draw this up, and let's get different people
You
up there
know,
and
you
make
know,
this look great.
I have an answer because I've actually thought about creating a board game about this. So, the Prophet's grandson was killed in a battle in Iraq. In God, the year escapes my mind. I think it was like
It would be like
732.
700s, 800s
I
around
think it
there.
was 732, or was it 782? I can't remember the year now exactly. 80. So the Prophet's grandson Hussein was killed in a battle of Karbala, and this is a really important event for Shia Muslims, and even more and more non-Shias are starting to realize the importance of this event. So this one individual and a small group of followers, like there was only a handful of them against an army of like 10,000, and they were brutally massacred, but he was standing up for truth and justice. And so he knew that he was going to lose his life in this battle, but it was important for him to stand up and fight for truth and justice. He was fighting against a caliph at that time who had completely corrupted the message of Islam and was living his life in a way that was completely un-Islamic. And so he was trying to bring back Islam and to what his grandfather had taught and what he himself was practicing, the good version of Islam. But he was brutally massacred. He was beheaded. His little 6-month-old baby was beheaded. Like a bunch of them, were just killed, and the women were imprisoned. But it's just such an important event in history, and it means a lot to so many Muslims. And if I could create a board game about that, that would be really.
What would it be? It sounds like a war game.
A war game, yeah, it would definitely be a war game.
Like an area control type game, or like
maybe, yeah. But then at the same time, it's like I don't know if the game could do justice to it. And in reality, it went one way, and if I don't know. I would have to think long and hard about whether actually it could be made into a board game and what it would mean if players from one side won, or if players from I don't know. I would have to think long and hard about that. But it's something I've thought about. So
themes all over the place, people.
Yeah.
I don't need his 500,000th game about what I'm talking about. So
yeah.
So we are going to conclude the podcast portion here. Once again, Sarah, go ahead and tell the people where they can contact you.
Sure. You can find me under Board Games in a Minute on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And if you're on, or also TikTok, TikTok, I'm Puffindor as well. So TikTok and Twitter, I'm Puffindor. So that's Puffindor. Yeah.
All right. Sarah Shah, thank you very much for coming by.
Yeah. Thank you.
If you can change your mind, you can change the world. So until next time, later, everybody.
Mm-hmm.